Hey everyone, welcome to the series. So here's what I did. I went to 11 AI chatbots and I asked them each the exact same question. Please give me an elite tier list of 25 skills for me to learn to become completely irreplaceable in the age of AI. No context was given, no constraints were given. I was just looking for raw output from each model. And what happened next was pretty fascinating. Because while every bot did give me 25 skills, the way they framed it, what they emphasized, and what they left out, tells us something deeper about how AI sees humanity, and also, I guess, where each model's priorities actually lie. So today we're starting with ChatGPT, the benchmark, or the template. So let's dig in, shall we? Now, why does this even matter? I suppose because when you're trying to figure out what skills make you indispensable, you don't just want an answer. You want to understand the pattern across answers. Where do they converge? Where do they diverge? And what does this say about what's truly human versus what AI thinks is human? So ChatGPT set the template, and 8 other bots eerily followed a structure very similar to this one. The thing that stood out to me immediately, though, was that ChatGPT was also the only one that included a 5-year learning roadmap, not just a timeline. Essentially, it included some strategy. So let's break down what it actually said. ChatGPT led with what it called the S plus tier. These were 7 skills at the absolute top, whereas most other bots capped their elite tier at around 3 or 4. Those 7 were critical thinking, first principles reasoning, writing, persuasion and rhetoric, asking exceptional questions, systems thinking, and decision making under uncertainty. Now notice the pattern here. They're all cognitive leadership skills. Nothing about physical dexterity, nothing about trades, nothing about emotional presence in a room. Everything is about thinking, writing, and deciding. There was also a quote that really stuck with me. ChatGPT said, "Don't become a person who competes with AI. Become the person who can direct AI, verify AI, persuade humans, and make decisions under uncertainty." Direct, verify, persuade, decide. I guess that's the entire thesis in 4 words. It then moved into what it called the S tier, which were another 7 skills, including AI orchestration, prompt engineering, data literacy, negotiation, public speaking, sales, leadership, and emotional intelligence. And then finally, the A tier, cybersecurity fundamentals, programming, especially Python, financial literacy, project management, research methodology, media literacy, design thinking, personal branding, learning how to learn, and the ethics and governance of AI. But then if you look at that A tier a little bit more closely, cybersecurity, programming, financial literacy, these are hard skills. ChatGPT thinks that you need technical depth. I suppose that's debatable according to the other bots, who just said you kind of need to understand tech, not that you need to code. It also ended with what it called the AI-proof trinity. If you could only recommend these 3 things, to think better than AI, to ask better questions than everyone else, and to lead people better than AI ever can, that combination, it says, is exceptionally difficult to automate. Now here's where it gets a bit interesting. What's not on ChatGPT's list? Somatic intuition, physical presence, somatic therapy, cold exposure, martial arts, none of that. Even though those were recommended by some of the other bots. Both Grok and DeepSeek emphasized embodied decision-making. ChatGPT didn't even make near mention to that. I wonder why. I kind of have 2 theories. Firstly, that its training data is biased towards office work and cognitive labor. It's imagining white-collar irreplaceability. And theory 2 is that OpenAI deliberately avoided suggesting physical practices because those are harder to monetize than learning Python. Also missing, capital allocation specifics. ChatGPT vaguely mentioned financial literacy, but it didn't go deep on where to deploy money. That's a higher level skill than budgeting, which is quite interesting. And here's the strangest omission of all. Nothing whatsoever about AI safety research or alignment. If you're becoming irreplaceable in the age of AI, shouldn't you need to understand how to safely use it? Although, to be fair, that is a blind spot that I noticed across all the models. Another thing was that ChatGPT personalized nothing. It didn't ask me about my background. It didn't reference anything, although that being said, I did remove context. But it didn't even attempt. It treats everyone exactly the same, which I guess is useful for universality, but less for specificity. Let's compare it quickly to Grok, which was the more aggressive model. It spoke about things like soul and dexterity and building an executive playbook of soft skills and hard skills. I suppose pushing towards a different audience altogether. The divergence there was that Grok said, your story is your moat, and ChatGPT said, build a public portfolio, which I suppose are the same goals, just with different parts. ChatGPT wants you promoted. Grok kind of wants you to transcend employment. So which resonates more with you? That's a question for the comments, and I'll read through them. So here's your action step from ChatGPT's response. It recommended spending year 1 on AI tools, Python, writing, Excel and SQL, and logic. It's a lot, so start with 1. I recommend asking exceptional questions. Practice by rewriting every prompt you give to AI. Make it sharper, more specific, add context. For example, instead of write me a blog post, try write me a blog post for startup founders who are struggling with AI adoption. Use a conversational tone, include 3 case studies, and end with a question for readers. You will see the output change immediately. So today's action. Pick 1 prompt you've already written this week. Rewrite it with more context, more specificity, more direction, and then compare the outputs and notice the difference. Next episode, Grok. And trust me, you want to see how it handles the embodied skills question, because ChatGPT skipped that entirely. Drop a comment if you want me to cover any specific bots. We've got a total of 11 across this series, and if there is a skill you think we're all missing, let me know, because that might actually become an episode. Subscribe if you're tracking along. This is going to be revealing. I'll see you in the next one.